Hey everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I'm here with probably a quick video. Every time I say that, it ends up being a long video. But I was making a series a while ago called Anomalies and Mistakes That Were Left in the Final Mix. And a lot of people seem to like that series, and I got a lot of people telling me about this weird anomaly in Master of Puppets. And I was kind of shocked because I'm like, I've been listening to that tune for decades, and I thought I knew everything about it. And all of a sudden people were like, no, there's this one part in the song where Cliff Burton actually plays a different note than the guitars are playing. And I just kind of shrugged it off. I'm like, well, that happens. Sometimes you're in the studio and you just hit the wrong fret or something and you just keep it. But it turns out that the part that they were talking about, he actually does it 12 times. So I thought if it was once or twice, no big deal. But if it's 12 times, I think it warrants a little bit of reflection and attention. So let's get to it. The part that I'm talking about is actually the pre-main solo. So it's the build-up where they all start saying master, master, master together, and it goes like this on the guitar. Okay, did you hear the highest note that kept getting played over and over again? First of all, it's a double hit, then it's a power chord. That's C sharp right there. Now, typically if somebody comes up to you and you're a bass player and they're like, okay, just do something underneath that, normally you would play the top note the same tonic, so you'd have the C sharp. But Cliff Burton decided, I think, to play a C note instead. So that's a half step behind the note that James Hetfield is playing for the recording. Now, if you know a lot about harmony, you know that that can clash pretty harsh. I mean, check this out. If we go C sharp and C at the same time, you get this kind of corn sound to it. All right, so it's the bass playing the C note. So that's why it's covered up a little bit, and they're singing master over the top of it, and the drums are going and everything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some different examples of it with the full band, basically. When I listened to the isolated bass track by Cliff Burton, a couple of questions came to me. First of all, I thought, did he do that in the studio and then do it differently live? I wasn't sure, so I tried to look up some footage, and it's so blurred out and kind of muffle sounding because it's all just from a camera's audio that you can't really tell what he's doing live. But in the studio, he's definitely hitting the C note. Let me grab the bass, actually. So I made the bass tone really gnarly today, so it sticks out a little bit so you can really hear it on small speakers. But you get this. There's the C at the top. But if you watch more modern videos, you can see that both Jason and Rob play the C sharp instead of the C. I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll actually go back and listen to some early demos of Master of Puppets, because maybe we could see if it was still that same way, the way Cliff played it with the C. When I listened to it, it sounds like he's doing the C sharp in the demo, which was really interesting to me. And what's really crazy is one of the guitars is actually doing its due dissonance, if you will, and playing something kind of interesting at the top. You could hear some dissonance, but on the guitar every other time. Isn't that strange? Another question that came to me was, did Cliff do this on purpose? Or was it just some kind of accident that they just kept in the recording? Because if it was on purpose, it kind of makes sense, because sometimes you want to use dissonance to really enhance part of a song. I did a whole video on Randy Rhoads. He used to double and triple track his solos. And once in a while, he would actually play two different parts. And it would go by really quick, but it would create this really interesting dissonance, which added to the kind of creepy quality to some parts of his lead playing. I can link that video down below if you want. So I decided to just have fun with this, and I thought, let's experiment a little bit. I'm going to record all the parts, I'll put them together, and the first version I'll show you is with Cliff doing the C note and the guitars doing the C sharp with drums. Full speed, and then slower so you can really hear the dissonance happen. So here we go. All right, isn't that strange that that's actually how it goes? Of course, I enhanced the bass so you can really hear it and stuff, but I also thought, what if Cliff played what the guitars played the C sharp? What would that sound like? Then I thought, what if we flip it and we have the guitars doing the C note as well with Cliff? How would that sound? That's actually pretty cool, isn't it? I think that could have worked perfectly for the song as well. I also thought, you know, if Cliff did this on purpose to kind of thicken up the sound, what if you did that with other Metallica riffs? So I just chose a couple kind of at random. You know, I thought For Whom the Bell Tolls would be cool. And I'm only going to do the dissonant notes on the higher chords that kind of hit, you know, just sort of like the stabbing chords at the top. And I was surprised by the result. Here's what it is. To me, it's a little more obvious than what happens in Master of Puppets. You know, it's just a lot of factors, but it just doesn't work that way. Maybe my ear just isn't used to that, so I don't like it as much as I like the Puppets version of the dissonance. But for Whom the Bell Tolls, it just sticks out in a weird way, doesn't it? And I just chose one more. I just thought, what about like No Remorse would be fun? So No Remorse is the same story as For Whom the Bell Tolls to me. It sounds weird. You know, we get so used to what we've grown up hearing, so I think that's why we're just not accustomed to that. What I think actually happened, if I had to like wager a guess, is I would say that they were in the studio. And Cliff just, for some reason, played C for that part. In the studio, oftentimes they do the layers of instruments, so bass and drums would record first, and then they would do the guitars later. So I'm wondering if the bass and drums were already committed to tape, and then James came in to do the rhythm parts, and he just didn't really notice it and played C sharp like he was used to doing. And so in the end, it just sort of slipped through the cracks and made it to the final cut. If it was a mistake, I could tell you why it slipped through the cracks. First of all, Cliff Burton isn't super prominent in the mix. If you listen to Kill 'Em All, his bass is a lot more kind of in your face, bass in your face. But on Puppets, it's a little bit more tucked under the guitar. There's a bit of a fuzz going on with this guitar. That's why I have my bass plugged into my Geddy Lee pedal to give it a little bit of an edge to have that kind of fuzzy sound to it. And that also covers up a lot of the direct sound. So it smooths it out a little bit and tucks it in a way that could get a little bit less obvious. And another reason is that Cliff is using his fingers, unlike Jason Newsted. So he's using his fingers and it gives it a little bit of a softer tone, which allows it to sort of fly under the radar a little bit as well. Now, don't get me wrong, the dissonance of two notes a half step apart can sound beautiful. If you don't believe me, go ahead and play a normal triad and add the major seventh note, and you'll have a major 7 chord, and that beautiful sound is a result of that same idea, the half step from the root. But like I showed earlier, it could also sound like Korn, and it could sound like a horror movie type of sound effect too. Okay, so if anything, if you didn't know about that anomaly, now you do. And, you know, I think it's actually a lot of fun to listen to the different versions and see what it would have been like if it would have been played differently from either the bass or the guitar standpoint. Let me know what you prefer. Obviously, probably what Metallica does, but if you thought it sounded cool, altered a little bit, I'd like to hear about it. So thank you for watching, everybody. I kept this one pretty short, right? Okay, we'll catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.